At last. Welcome, NIO. As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus. Unfortunately, no one can be told what NIO Inc. is. You have to see it for yourself. Take the red pill, and I'll show you how deep NIO Inc.'s rabbit hole goes.
Just kidding, guys. That was clearly not Morpheus from The Matrix. That is, however, my dog Murph, and one of her million nicknames is Morpheus. And by the way, that was not easy to set up, so if you did appreciate that stupid over-the-top intro, do me a favor, chuck us an early thumbs up to show some support. Alright, enough messing around. Today we have another EV company we're looking at, only this time we're heading off to China. NIO is a Chinese company who've been around since 2014, and they've been on the stock exchange since 2018. And they're a global startup that sell electric smart vehicles around China and also other parts of the world like San Jose, London, and Munich, and their intentions are very clear. They're trying to achieve something more than just provide a new style of vehicle. They want to change the way we think about vehicles and improve the overall ownership experience. And here's the kicker. They want to free people from driving, giving them the freedom of more time. And let me tell you, it was fascinating and really exciting to learn about what they have to offer and what they could become in the future. So as per usual, I spent a lot of time researching them on your behalf just so I could condense it down into a nice digestible video for you. So hold on to your hat because we're going in deep, y'all. So straight up, I really liked what I saw here from NIO, and there are a lot of key points that I want to share with you today that all tie together really nicely and paint a picture of where NIO is headed as a company. So let's start smashing them out. First up, what do NIO actually do? Right off the bat, let's take a look at their vehicles, and you can see that they're very modern looking, very sleek, and some of them look like they could be in a futuristic Fast and the Furious movie. And they also provide a variety of products on top of a variety of different vehicles, which is so important, especially in this day and age. And in NIO's case, they have some variety. They even have NIO House, which as you can see is targeting some lifestyle products and even a clothing line. And NIO Power is another interesting facet of their company, where they have a mobile internet-based charging solution, as well as offering the ability to swap out a battery within 6 minutes. And while NIO Power is really interesting, it's not going to be something we look at in great detail in this video because the video will just end up being too long, but I do encourage you to look into it because it is very interesting. And lastly, just like almost every company out there these days, they also have their own app. I will say this, I do like the way they're branding their product because it looks like they're going in the direction of offering a lifestyle product. So not just vehicles, but an overall lifestyle. And that could be a really clever way to go, especially when you've got a brand so strong and so solidified within their market, being Tesla, the absolute king of the castle. They need to do something really clever, and I think they've done that in a very nice way. Now, the next thing I want to look at is competitive advantage, one of the most important facets of any company, in my opinion. Now, as I mentioned at the start of the video, they're focused mostly on China at the moment, but they do cover various parts of the world, and they're looking to expand in the US and the European countries in the future. But the biggest competitive advantage that you can give me is to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying it so far. It means a lot to me. Turn that sucker blue. Did you do it? Thank you very much. Now, arguably NIO's biggest competitive advantage is actually that they are a Chinese company. And the reason this is an advantage is that China has over 1 billion people, which dwarfs the American market. And if you take a look at this graphic, you'll see that as the years have gone by, the Chinese EV market has grown very quickly. And this is for a few reasons, the biggest being the sheer weight of numbers, as well as the world's push towards more progressive and advanced technology, and the desire to make the world more green. So if they can become the kingpin of the Chinese electric vehicle market and eventually look to take a portion of the American and European market, you can see that they have the potential to literally reach billions of people. And most of us have one very important thing in common. We like things that are made in our country by our own people. It's just the nature of the beast. It's the way we are wired. And if that's the case for NIO, then they stand to reach a huge market, and that is very appealing for investors. Now, before we start to get into the really nitty gritty, there's one important question you have to be able to answer if you're considering investing in NIO. Do you believe there is room in the EV market for more competition for Tesla? Because unlike Hyliion, Nikola, and Workhorse, for example, NIO seems to be targeting the same market as Tesla. And don't forget, Tesla are set up in Shanghai. They've built a massive factory, and they are going to be racing to dominate that Chinese market. So we need to ask ourselves, is there room in the market for Tesla and NIO? But not just those two. Can there be a variety of companies in that market, just like there are now For the normal vehicle market, you've got Mazda, Toyota, Mitsubishi, Subaru, Hyundai, Honda. The list goes on, and I know Americans, you say them very differently to us, but at least you know how the Australians say it now. But can they all exist together? Because the reality is, if EV does become the way of the future, there's going to need to be room for a lot of them. So do you see NIO fitting alongside Tesla for now? And do you see them dominating the market when others start to come up? That's a very important question to be able to answer. Now, one thing that's very important and really positive for NIO that I haven't seen anybody talking about so far, and it's going to help them penetrate the market. Not sure why I had to say penetrate. And that is that Tesla already did most of the heavy lifting for these EV companies. They are the ones who had the burden of convincing the entire world that EV was the way of the future, and also that they're capable of making a vehicle that is good enough to lead us into the future. That was Tesla's problem, not NIO's problem. And that's a really nice place for these new EV companies to slot in without having to break down those enormous barriers that human beings have. We don't like change. We like to do what already works and what's been proven. So then what separates NIO from the rest of the competitors in their industry? What makes them different? Well, we've already talked about the fact that they're a Chinese company and they have a massive market to reach, but they also already have vehicles out on the roads, collecting data, being driven, being sold. It's not just hypothetical. So many EV companies at the moment don't have any, or in some cases, don't have many vehicles on the road, which makes a lot of their success and potential merely hypothetical. But NIO already have the ball well and truly rolling and are making worldwide sales. And speaking of sales, let's take a look at their sales and revenues right now. So if we look here, we can see that their deliveries in April of 2020 of the ES8 and ES6 were 3,155 vehicles, a growth of 180% year over year. Then May 2020 continued the flow and was another record month for deliveries, where they reached 3,436 vehicles, more than 215% growth year over year. And then they improved on that again in June, setting their new monthly record with 3,740 vehicles, another 180% growth year over year. This brought their total ES6 and ES8 sales for 2020 to 14,169 vehicles, and that's only through to June. And you'll notice that it accounts for more than 30% of their total deliveries in their history, being 46,082 vehicles. And in my opinion, this is the most important factor that's going to determine their success or their failure. They're a new company and their growth should be huge. We should be expecting 100, 200% improvements month on month, year on year. This is how we know that they're heading in the right direction. And if they weren't doing that, that's when there'd be alarm bells ringing. Don't forget, these vehicles require a lot of new and expensive technology and parts for production, and they're very capital intensive. So without rapidly growing sales, they just won't be able to keep on top of their mounting debts. And at their moment, their sales are doing just that. They are growing rapidly, month on month, year on year. They're clearly going in the right direction. The big question is going to be, can they keep that up? And can they really start to make a big footprint in that market? And by the way, check out how their stock has gone since the release of these numbers in early June. Nothing but green pastures. And by the way, don't expect that to continue forever, because there's been so much hype and such a big buildup. You can expect a little bit of a pullback from the market. There will be fluctuations. And by the way, while we're taking a look at it, notice that they have a market cap of $17 billion as I recorded this video. And meanwhile, Tesla have a market cap of $286 billion, which shows you that there is plenty of room to grow within that industry. Now, here's something very interesting. If we take a look at their revenue estimates on Yahoo Finance, there are some big growth expectations here. Their expected revenues are going to increase by 71% this year and 52% next year, despite Uncle Roni. And the reason I say this is interesting is because results like this and projections like this can have a twofold effect. And here's why. If those projections turn out to be correct and they do have those growth figures, then this company is on a fast track to making a real imprint on the EV market. And this is going to get investors very excited and extremely bullish. However, if the company doesn't live up to these projections, then this is where you're going to see investors lose a lot of their confidence. It's far too early to determine a company's success or a failure at the baby phases of their business. We need to tick off a lot more milestones and see a lot more success for a longer period of time before we can start calling them the Tesla of China. So just don't make the mistake of falling for the sales pitch. Make sure you fall for the sales, the figures, the numbers, the real hard evidence that they're actually on the right track. Because hype is hype, but success is based on results. One thing that I always look out for with companies, and it's something that any investor can appreciate, is how open and honest they are, and it all comes down to their transparency. And this is something that I really like about NIO, because at the moment they're giving us sales figures every single month, which allows the investors or potential investors or just interested parties to really keep track of their actual progress and their actual results. Very, very important and super underrated. All right, now it's time to flip the table a little bit, because it can't all be positive. We've got to look over some of the negatives, and one of those, unfortunately, is their financials. But just realize that in the early days of companies, that's the hardest time for them to have good financials, because they haven't done enough to bring in enough money yet to get them out of debt, to get a big asset base, all that stuff. So keep that in mind. So before we hit the Holy Valance sheet, aka the balance sheet, let's have a squiz over their income statement. Now, right off the bat, we can see that their revenues less their cost of revenues have their gross profit figures in the red. Now, to add to that, their net income is also in the red. But despite the losses being very high, it's still an improvement on their 2018 losses. All right, flipping over to their balance sheet now, we can see that their current liabilities are nearly $5 billion. But as high as that number is for their short life, their current liabilities are nearly $9.5 billion, which is close to double and far from ideal. And sure, they have a decent number and increasing number of deferred revenues, which I think is a good thing. But like I've said in a lot of my videos, having higher current liabilities than current assets means they're relying on short-term sales to keep themselves afloat. And at the moment, their losses are quite high, which is where the next piece of the puzzle comes into play. On July 10th, only a few days ago, NIO managed to secure a $1.5 billion line of credit from a consortium of Chinese banks. I'll admit, that's a word that I had not heard before. And what this tells us is the Chinese banks not only believe that NIO are good for the money, but they also believe in their future potential. And while this does have the potential to increase their debts, it also gives them a lot more liquidity, and they can use those debts to create new assets and to create new revenues. And that's really important, especially considering they don't have a great cash situation right now. They need this line of credit in order to boost their sales, in order to keep their company rolling. Otherwise, they're at risk of going bankrupt. So this came at a beautiful time for NIO. However, and this is very important for investors to understand, and I want to make sure it's really clear for you, because I've heard it explained incorrectly from other channels on YouTube. Just recently, the state government in Hefei, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, in China, offered NIO a bailout. So what's happened is the government in Hefei offered the bailout in exchange for NIO committing its core business and assets in China, including vehicles, research and development, supply chain, sales and services, and NIO Power, which we spoke about earlier. And on top of that, NIO also has to invest $600 million of its own money in NIO China and build a headquarters for their operations in Hefei. And in case that wasn't enough, the Hefei Investor Group now owns 24% of NIO China, which does have further implications, but effectively, they've had to give up some of their control and some of their power where they probably wouldn't have liked to. And they do have the potential to hurt NIO in the future. However, to put a positive spin on this, NIO Inc., which is the NIO that we know, have told shareholders they will still hold the remaining 76% ownership and will for the long term. And this is really important because it means that they can remain independent from the Chinese government, and they're still going to be calling the shots on their own business. And it does get a bit more complicated than that, but it's going to be too much to put in this video. So if you are interested, I'll leave a link in the description box. Definitely check it out if you are interested. Now, my overall thoughts on NIO is that I actually do really like them. I like where they're headed. I like what they're doing. I like their brand. Their vehicles look great. They seem to perform well. They seem to be really receptive in China to the vehicle. And it's only a matter of time before that really expands and grows. And it's going to take a long time, but they really do have the potential to build a brand like Tesla for the Chinese market. And who knows, maybe for the rest of the world in time. Sure, they do have big debts and they're not profitable yet, and they probably won't be profitable next year and maybe even the year after that. But if their projections are true, then there's no doubt they're heading in the right direction. And with the government bailout and some more investments that we've seen through this video, that should hold them in good stead. Guys, thanks so much for joining me today. Don't forget to give this video a fat thumbs up.
And if you don't like and subscribe, then Murph's gonna come and find you. And trust me, she gets hungry.